So we ask this question: why does God allow the innocent to suffer? At this point, we know that there is no clear answer to this question. But even if there's no clear meaning behind the suffering in this world, as we said, it's still possible for us to respond to suffering. So, throughout this discussion and in the succeeding discussions, we want to reflect on how we can respond to suffering, even if we cannot fully rationalize it. So, how do we respond to suffering? Well, one response to suffering is resentment. And you will understand why a lot of people would feel angry and bitter about the suffering they go through, precisely because suffering is so difficult. But another response to suffering is what I would call immersion. And I'm not necessarily talking about a social program or visiting a marginalized area, although those could be ways in which you can immerse. But immersion is about learning how to enter the suffering of another person. It may not provide all the solutions to the suffering, but it's a good place to begin. Now, I want to show you this photo of a kid swimming because this is what immersion is about. It's really putting your whole body underwater so that your whole body gets wet. There are some people who just sit by a pool and get their feet wet. There are some people who just wade around the pool. They don't go underwater, they just swim around. But there are those who go underwater. That's immersion. When your whole body is in the water, or now speaking in figurative terms, when your whole person is involved, that's immersion. Now, having said this, I now want to take a more explicit theological point. Okay. How does this sense of immersion apply, especially in the context of a person? Okay, for a lot of us, Jesus Christ has already become a very, very familiar name and personality in our lives, whether we believe him or not, whether we love him or not. One thing's for sure is that we know Jesus, or we have at least some idea of what Jesus is, or who Jesus is. But here's a problem that I have, which probably accounts for why there are a lot of people who don't seem to find Christianity appealing or who even don't believe in God at all. My problem is that our images of Jesus tend to be so distant. We know that he's this nice guy. We know that he's this person who's powerful, who can perform miracles. But then, for somebody who lives in 2020, what does that all mean? Is Christianity just about believing in this guy who's powerful and who's kind, probably pretty relaxed and whatever? Is that all that there is? Is Jesus just that? What I want to present as early as now is that for Christianity, Jesus is more than just this wonder worker. Yes, Christians believe that Jesus is indeed God, God in the flesh, God walking among God's people. But what does all of this highfalutin language mean? It simply means that Jesus is God's immersion. in our condition. God doesn't just sit by the pool of our existence and gets his feet wet. God doesn't just wade around the pool of the human condition, not fully involved. But Christians believe that in the person of Jesus, God goes underwater, fully immersed, fully involved in the human condition. You know, a funny thing, sometimes I would ask catechists or religious educators who I would give talks to or I would teach, I would ask them, do you believe that Jesus took a crap? He pooped? And for some people, they're taken aback by that because they're not used to the image of Jesus taking a poop. I'd ask them, do you think Jesus knows how to play basketball really, really well? And some would even hesitate for a moment because some would think, but he's God, he can perform miracles. Of course, he could probably shoot a three-pointer. And you know, much more scandalous, I would even ask them, do you think Jesus had sexual urges? And they would hesitate to answer that. But get this, people, think about it. Christianity has taught, ever since the Council of Chalcedon, one of the great councils of the church in the 5th century, Jesus is fully divine, yes, but he's also fully human, which means he would have taken a poop, which means that Jesus would have not known how to play basketball because basketball did not exist during his time. I don't even play basketball, and I will most likely do a layup better than Jesus. Jesus had sexual urges. He also longed for intimacy. Why? Because he's fully human. But for some strange reason, a lot of people, especially religious people, can't seem to accept that. They're very uncomfortable with that thought. But that's the way God immerses himself in the human condition, to go through the very things we go through. And yet, here we do have all of these nice and polished images of Jesus. Our images of Jesus are truthful, sure, but they're also polished. They highlight his divinity, that's right, but if you look at them, it seems that the human is under emphasized or not emphasized at all, maybe even forgotten or neglected. Jesus is human too. Jesus suffered too. So, to talk about our response to suffering, we will look at this person who, yes, Christians believe to be God, truly God, but is also very, very human. People, I hope you remember this, especially when we talk about Jesus and whenever you think about Jesus for the rest of your life, whether you believe in him or not, whether you do theology or not. Remember that the hocus pocus moments are not what make Jesus special. It's not the miracles. It's not these powerful signs and wonders. It's not, as some people would call it, the magic tricks. It's not that. It's the meaning behind all of that. And what was the meaning? It was his uncanny, radical ability to immerse in people's suffering. No other religion would ever claim that God immerses in the suffering of his own people, as it suffers with them. That's what's supposed to make Christianity unique. And yet, at the same time, the reason why it doesn't seem to be so convincing anymore, Christianity, is because we focus too much on the hocus pocus. But the divine is best expressed in the human, in how we understand, in our own context. So remember, people, yes, Jesus is divine, but don't forget he's also as human as you and me. His divinity is seen in his humanity, and they are not separate dimensions. In the person of Jesus, the divine and the human connect. We realize that there's more to our human condition than just what's mundane, than just suffering and misery. But we also realize that, that the divine is not something unreachable. The divine is not something abstract. The divine can also be very much within our experience. So remember this very important point, which we'll carry on for the rest of our discussions, that in Jesus we will find the God who immerses and connects with the suffering of his people. This is the best way to understand the person and significance of Jesus.